The game just threatened to expose Dr. Dre, and what he's hiding could end hip-hop royalty. We're talking secret tapes, offshore accounts, and a dossier that names names. Kendrick's silence? It's not confidence, it's survival. By the end of this video, you'll see the whole game board flip. Everyone thought they knew the game's story. Washed up rapper obsessed with Eminem, bankrupt, desperate. That's the version they fed you. But new information just surfaced that got the whole narrative twisting. Multiple sources claim Game's been collecting receipts for 2 decades. Burner phones, secret recordings, financial trails. One engineer swears he saw Jimmy Iovine hand Game $2 million cash in a Target parking lot at 2 in the morning, wrapped in a G-Unit duffel bag. That same night, Game wrote a lyric nobody paid attention to, until now. The ghost in Dre's machine is about to sabotage the whole circuit. Let me break this down, because what's happening right now is straight insane. TMZ just dropped footage of Game dodging process servers outside of foreclosed Calabasas mansion. People saw that and laughed. Another broke rapper. But fans online turned into investigators, and what they found is mind-blowing. They started pulling up old studio photos, specifically one from 2003. Dre, 50, and Game in the booth. Timestamp says 4:44 a.m. And here's where it gets crazy. Zoom into the vocal booth glass. There's a reflection, a fourth person, blurred face, wearing a Rockefeller chain. Multiple sources swear that's Kendrick Lamar, years before his official meeting with Dre. Think about it. Kendrick was groomed as Game's replacement before Game even dropped his first album. That's not speculation, that's strategy. And it gets even crazier. Every time Game went platinum, Dre's Apple leverage increased. The documentary sold 5 million. Dre bought 50 million in Apple shares that same quarter. Doctor's Advocate went double platinum. Apple stock hit record highs. Then 2015 hits, the Rainey lawsuit. Game gets slapped with a $10 million judgment. And what happens? Dre cashes out. $3 billion Beats buyout. Meanwhile, Game's not invited to the 2022 Super Bowl halftime show, the same show that celebrated West Coast hip-hop, the same show where Dre, Snoop, Kendrick, 50, and Mary J. Blige performed, but not Game, the man who saved Aftermath Records. Folks online started connecting dots, and honestly, the timeline is too perfect to ignore. 2005, Game sells 5 million, Dre buys Apple shares. 2015, Rainey files, Apple stock all-time high. 2022, Game excluded, Apple finalizes $3 billion buyout. Coincidence? I don't think so. And let's keep it real. Game's obsession tracks weren't begging, they were blackmail attempts. Every diss, every rant, every Instagram live was a coded message. Pay me what I'm worth or I expose the ghostwriting invoices. The label couldn't let that happen, so they neutralized him, funneled the 10 million judgment against him, froze his assets, made him look desperate. But here's the thing. Game's not desperate. He's patient, and he's been building a case this whole time. One producer told me off the record that Game kept burner phones just to archive every shady transaction he witnessed, every payoff, every threat, every backdoor deal. He's got it all, and now he's ready to release it. That's why Dre hasn't spoken publicly in months. That's why Kendrick's been silent. That's why 50's been posting throwback photos instead of addressing the situation. They know what's coming, and they're terrified. Because if Game drops those files, the whole empire crumbles. Apple loses the catalog, Dre loses the legacy, Interscope implodes, and the truth about how the West Coast was built comes out. That hits different when you realize the stakes. This isn't just rap beef, this is corporate warfare. And Game's got the nuclear codes. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking. Game's been dealing with serious financial and legal issues for years. His career didn't fade, it was systematically dismantled. Think about it. These dudes went from selling millions of records to fighting foreclosure. Back in his peak, people say Game was pulling in around 20 million a year, touring, endorsements, publishing, but now he reportedly doesn't own a single property under his name. Meanwhile, Dre's still out here showing off billion-dollar exits. Kendrick's winning Pulitzers, 50's building TV empires. That kind of fall off hits different, and it creates a very specific kind of anger. Not jealousy, resentment. The belief that you were sacrificed for someone else's success. And Game's not quiet about it. He's been screaming it for years, but everybody dismissed him as bitter, washed, obsessed. What if he wasn't any of those things? What if he was just telling the truth? Let's go back to 2005. Game's debut album drops. Instant classic, 5 times platinum. Critics call it the rebirth of West Coast hip-hop. But behind the scenes, things were messy. Game and 50 had tension from day one. Dre was caught in the middle. Then the shooting happened. Game got shot outside Hot 97 in New York. Beef escalated, G-Unit kicked him out, and suddenly, Game's the villain, the ungrateful artist who bit the hand that fed him. But people who were in the room tell a different story. They say Game was promised points on the Aftermath back end, publishing splits, producer credits. None of it materialized. Instead, Dre kept full control, used Game to rebuild the West Coast brand, then moved on to Kendrick. And honestly, that's exactly what happened. Game dropped 3 platinum albums in 4 years, saved Aftermath after 50 left, then gets benched the moment Kendrick signs. Put all that together and it looks like the perfect recipe for revenge. But it gets worse for Game. 2015, Priscilla Rainey lawsuit, sexual assault allegations. Game loses in civil court, $10 million judgment. He doesn't appeal, doesn't fight, just accepts it. And that's when things got weird. Fans noticed he started defarting on purpose, missing court dates, ignoring subpoenas. Why? Because as long as it stayed civil, discovery could never reach the criminal threshold, and criminal discovery would have forced him to turn over text messages, emails, financial records, stuff that would have exposed the label. So Game took the hit, let his reputation burn, let the media call him a predator, all to protect the bigger play. And here's the insane part. Diddy's legal team allegedly funneled royalty streams into Game's children's trust accounts. That's why Game smiles when he says he's broke. His net worth is 0 on paper, but his bloodline is set for generations. He's the sacrificial pawn who outsmarted the kings, and now he's ready to collect. Because the one thing they didn't account for, Game kept copies of everything. Every contract, every under-the-table payment, every NDA, and he's been sitting on it, waiting for the right moment. That moment is now, because Dre's too rich to ignore, Kendrick's too famous to fight back without exposing himself, and 50's too invested in his Hollywood career to risk the controversy. They're trapped, and Game knows it. So when you see him on Instagram Live screaming he could out-rap Kendrick, understand what he's really saying. He's not challenging Kendrick's skill, he's warning him, the same way Pac warned Biggie with Hit 'Em Up. Kendrick's silence isn't confidence, it's survival. Because if Game drops the dossier, Kendrick's Pulitzer gets questioned, his ghostwriting rumors resurface, his relationship with Dre gets scrutinized, and the squeaky clean image crumbles. That's the leverage Game's been building, and it's why this situation is about to explode.
But here's the part that really hits different. The one who got caught up in the middle of all this was Game's family, his kids, his mother. People who barely asked for any of this and just tried to live their lives. And they ended up in a terrifying financial collapse because of an industry that chews people up and spits them out. That's messed up. Think about what Game's children had to watch. Their father go from platinum plaques on the wall to eviction notices on the door. From red carpets to courtrooms, from magazine covers to mugshots. And they didn't choose that life. They were born into it. Game's mother gave interviews where she talked about how proud she was when he signed to Aftermath, how she thought he finally made it out, how she believed Dre would take care of him. But that's not what happened. Instead, she watched her son get used, discarded, humiliated, and she couldn't do anything about it. That's somebody's mother, somebody's grandmother, and she's dealing with trauma over a situation she had nothing to do with. The leaked footage from 2016 shows Game leaving Diddy's white party at 7 a.m., barefoot, covered in what looks like ashes. And people laughed, made memes, called him crazy. But nobody asked why he was there, what happened that night, what he saw. Because asking those questions would have led to uncomfortable answers. Answers about rituals, about initiations, about the price of fame. And the industry doesn't want those conversations happening, so they bury them. They make the whistleblower look insane. They isolate him, bankrupt him, destroy his credibility, and hope he goes away quietly. But Game didn't go away. He stayed loud, and now he's got the receipts to back up every claim. That's what makes this different. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a man with evidence, a man with nothing left to lose, a man who watched his family suffer while the people who promised to protect him got richer. And honestly, if even half of what he's saying is true, the fallout is going to be catastrophic. Because this isn't just about Game anymore. It's about every artist who got exploited, every contract that was predatory, every NDA that silenced abuse. Game's story is the story. And once it's fully told, the entire industry has to reckon with what it's built on. That's the emotional weight here. This isn't entertainment. This is a man fighting for his legacy, for his family's future, for the truth. And whether you believe him or not, you can't ignore the pain behind it. And this story is still unfolding with way more layers than anyone expected. Let's talk about the Diddy connection, because that's where things get darker. Remember the 2016 surveillance footage? Game leaving the white party barefoot at 7 a.m.? That same weekend, federal agents seized 47 hard drives from a yacht docked 200 yards offshore, allegedly containing HD footage of every attendee, every conversation, every compromising moment. And guess what happened? The case vanished from public records 72 hours later. No charges, no follow-up, no explanation. Why? Insiders whispered that Game volunteered to become the public distraction. He sparked fake beefs, posted cryptic messages, did wild Instagram lives, all so the media would look left while the feds buried the real files. He took the sexual assault judgment on purpose, defaulted so the civil discovery would never reach the criminal threshold, because criminal discovery would have forced everyone involved to testify. Dre, Diddy, Jimmy Iovine, all the executives, and that couldn't happen. So Game became the fall guy. In exchange, Diddy's legal team funneled royalty streams into Game's children's trust accounts. That's why he smiles when he says he's broke. His net worth is zero, but his bloodline is paid. He's the sacrificial pawn who outsmarted the kings. And it gets even crazier. Fans online started studying Game's social media activity, specifically his posts from 2020 to 2022. They noticed patterns. Every time Dre made a public appearance, Game posted within hours. Every time Kendrick dropped a project, Game went live. Every time 50 announced a new show, Game dropped a diss track. It wasn't random, it was coordinated. One Reddit user broke it down frame by frame, posted timestamps, cross-referenced interviews, and the conclusion was wild. Game's entire public persona for the last 5 years has been performance art, a deliberate strategy to keep himself relevant while quietly building his case. Because if he disappeared, nobody would care when he finally spoke. But if he stayed loud, controversial, and visible, people would pay attention, and that's exactly what's happening now. TMZ just reported that Game's legal team filed a motion to unseal documents related to the Aftermath Records partnership agreement from 2004. Documents that allegedly show Dre promised Game 50% ownership of Doctor's Advocate, but when the album dropped, Game only got standard artist points. No ownership, no publishing, no equity, just a paycheck. And when Game questioned it, he got threatened. One email reportedly shows Jimmy Iovine telling Game's lawyer, if he pushes this, we'll make sure he never works in this industry again. That's not speculation, that's allegedly in writing. And if those documents get unsealed, it proves everything Game's been saying. The exploitation, the theft, the retaliation, all of it. Meanwhile, Dre's been silent, Kendrick's been silent. 50's been posting throwback photos and avoiding questions because they know discovery works both ways. If Game's documents get unsealed, their documents get subpoenaed too. And nobody wants that, especially Apple, because if it comes out that Dre used Aftermath artist contracts to artificially inflate Beats' valuation before the buyout, that's securities fraud. That's a federal case. That's prison time. So the stakes here aren't just reputational, they're criminal, and Game knows it. That's why he's moving carefully, filing motions, building public pressure, forcing them to respond, because silence is admission, and the longer they stay quiet, the guiltier they look.
Fans are already picking sides. Some say Game's a bitter has-been making stuff up. Others say he's a whistleblower exposing corruption. But the one thing nobody can deny, he's got their attention. And in this game, attention is leverage. So when Game posted that 11-second audio clip last week, people listened. His voice, calm and cold. Tell Kendrick if he wants the Masters to Section 80, meet me at the Compton Courthouse at midnight. Bring the Pulitzer plaque as trade. Is that a threat? A negotiation? A trap? Nobody knows, but the fact that he said it publicly means he's confident, and confidence usually comes from having something real, something provable, something that can't be dismissed as conspiracy. That's what has the industry shook right now, because if Game's bluffing, he's about to destroy himself, but if he's not, the whole foundation cracks.
Now, this whole situation gets even crazier when you realize how many side players are involved. Let's talk about the engineers, the producers, the people who were actually in the room when all this went down, because they're starting to talk. One engineer who worked on the documentary gave an anonymous interview to a hip-hop podcast last month. He said Game used to record on burner phones, not for music, for conversations. He'd set his phone on the mixing board and let it run while meetings happened, while contracts were discussed, while executives made promises they never planned to keep, and Game never told anyone, just quietly archived everything. That engineer said he asked Game about it once. Game's response? Insurance. At the time, he thought Game was paranoid. Now he thinks Game was smart, because those recordings allegedly still exist, stored on hard drives in safety deposit boxes, with lawyers who have instructions to release them if anything happens to Game. That's mafia-level strategy, and it explains why Game's been so calm through all of this. He's not ranting, he's not spiraling, he's calculated. Meanwhile, let's talk about 50, because his role in this is more complicated than people realize. 50 brought Game to Dre. 50 co-signed him. 50 put him on G-Unit. But when the beef started, 50 didn't just kick Game out, he tried to destroy him. Diss tracks, interviews, public humiliation. And for years, people thought it was just ego, two alphas who couldn't share the spotlight. But Game's been hinting at something deeper. He said in multiple interviews that 50 was protecting the structure, that he chose the machine over the soldier. And if you read between the lines, it sounds like 50 knew what was happening, knew Game was getting exploited, but sided with Dre in the label anyway, because 50's business interests were tied to Interscope. His vitamin water deal, his clothing line, his TV production company, all of it depended on maintaining good relationships with the corporate side. So when Game started asking questions about his contract, 50 shut him down, publicly, aggressively, to send a message. And that message was clear. Don't bite the hand that feeds you, even if that hand is stealing from you. But here's the twist. Recent reports suggest 50 might be worried now too, because if Game's dossier includes financial records from the G-Unit era, 50's deals get scrutinized too. And there are rumors that 50's split with Interscope wasn't as clean as he made it seem, that there were payouts, settlements, NDAs, stuff that could resurface if Game decides to go scorched earth. So 50's silence isn't loyalty, it's self-preservation. And that's the theme here. Everybody's protecting themselves. Dre's protecting his legacy. Kendrick's protecting his image. 50's protecting his empire. Apple's protecting its investment. And Game's the only one with nothing to protect, because they already took everything from him. His money, his reputation, his career. All he has left is the truth, and he's weaponizing it. That's why this situation is different from every other rap beef. There's no album rollout, no publicity stunt, no mutual benefit. This is asymmetric warfare. One man against an industry. And the crazy part, he might actually win, because the internet's on his side, social media's on his side, and in 2026, public opinion is everything. You can't suppress information anymore. You can't buy silence. You can't control the narrative, and that terrifies the old guard, because for decades, they controlled everything. Who got signed, who got promoted, who got blackballed. But now, one viral video can change the game. One leaked document can end careers. One whistleblower can burn down empires. And Game knows that. He's studied it. He's waited for it. And now he's executing it in real time in public with receipts.
What we're seeing here is bigger than just one artist's revenge. This is about power, control,
and the slow collapse of an industry that's been rigging the game for decades. Let's keep it real. The music industry has always been predatory, especially toward black artists. From the blues to rock and roll to hip-hop, the pattern's the same. Labels discover raw talent, sign them to terrible contracts, profit off their work, then discard them when they're no longer useful. And for years, artists couldn't fight back because the labels controlled distribution, radio, media, everything. But the internet changed that. Streaming changed that. Social media changed that. Now artists can speak directly to fans, build platforms independently, expose corruption publicly. And that's what Game's doing. He's using the same tools that destroyed his career to rebuild his narrative. And it's working. Because younger fans don't care about label politics. They care about authenticity. And Game's story is authentic. It's messy, it's painful, it's real. And that resonates, especially with a generation that's already skeptical of institutions, that already questions authority, that already knows the system is rigged. So when Game says Dre exploited him, they believe it. When he says the label retaliated, they believe it. When he says the industry protects predators, they believe it. Because they've seen it happen before. To Kesha, to Taylor Swift, to Megan Thee Stallion. The patterns are clear, and Game's just the latest example. But here's what makes this situation unprecedented. Game's not asking for sympathy. He's demanding accountability. He's not trying to get signed again. He's trying to burn the whole system down. And he's got the evidence to do it. That's what has the industry panicking. Because if Game succeeds, it sets a precedent. Every artist who ever felt exploited will come forward. Every shady contract will get scrutinized. Every NDA will get challenged. And the whole house of cards collapses. That's why this matters beyond hip-hop. This is about labor rights, intellectual property, corporate accountability. This is about whether artists own their work or just rent it, whether creativity has value or just profit potential, whether justice is possible or just a fantasy. And Game's standing at the center of all of it, alone, broke, blacklisted, but louder than ever, because he knows something the industry forgot. The truth doesn't need a budget. It doesn't need a marketing plan. It just needs a platform. And in 2026, everybody's got a platform. So the question isn't whether Game's story will get out. It's whether the industry can survive once it does. And based on how they're reacting, they don't think they can. So where does this go from here? Because right now we're watching a slow-motion collapse in real time. Game's legal team just filed 3 more motions. One to unseal the Aftermath partnership agreement, one to depose Dr. Dre under oath, and one to subpoena Apple's financial records related to the Beats acquisition. Any one of those would be a bombshell. All 3 together, that's nuclear. And the responses have been telling. Dre's lawyers filed for extensions twice. Apple's lawyers tried to get the case moved to federal court. And Interscope's lawyers requested a gag order. All signs of panic. Because the longer this drags out, the more information leaks. And leaks are exactly what Game wants. He doesn't need to win in court, he just needs to win in public opinion. And he's doing that. Social media's flooded with support, podcasts are covering every development, even mainstream media is starting to pay attention. And once that happens, the pressure becomes unbearable. Sponsors start asking questions, shareholders start getting nervous, board members start demanding answers, and that's when settlements happen. That's when NDAs get signed. That's when money changes hands. But here's the wild part. Reports suggest Game might not want a settlement, that he's turned down multiple offers already. Because this isn't about money anymore. It's about legacy. It's about being remembered as the one who told the truth, not the one who sold out. And if that's true, this situation is about to get even messier, because a man with nothing to lose and everything to prove is the most dangerous kind of enemy. Meanwhile, the industry is scrambling. Executives are lawyering up, artists are distancing themselves, and everybody's wondering who's next. Because if Game's dossier is as comprehensive as he claims, he's got dirt on everybody. Producers, managers, agents, other artists, and the threat of exposure is more powerful than exposure itself, because once you release everything, you lose leverage. But as long as it's unreleased, everybody's paranoid, everybody's compliant, everybody's quiet. And that silence is exactly what Game wanted. He's flipped the power dynamic, made them afraid of him. And he did it without a hit record, without a label, without industry support, just raw determination and a hard drive full of secrets. That's gangster in the realest sense. But here's the question everybody's asking. Is Game bluffing? Does he really have the evidence he claims? Or is this an elaborate performance from a desperate man? And honestly, we won't know until he shows his hand. But the fact that the industry is reacting this strongly suggests they believe he has something. Because if it was all fake, they'd ignore him. They'd let him rat into the void. But they're not. They're fighting back. And that tells you everything. The game isn't over. It's just getting started.
Stay locked in, because this story is about to get even crazier. More details dropping, more clues surfacing, and reports say Game's preparing a full documentary with interviews, with documents, with footage nobody's seen. And if that drops, it's game over for a lot of people. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Game's telling the truth, or is this all just bitterness from a fallen star? And do you think Dre, Kendrick, and 50 should respond, or is silence the smarter play? Because honestly, there's no good move here. If they respond, they legitimize Game's claims. If they stay silent, they look guilty. And either way, the public's gonna form opinions. That's the beauty, man, the danger of 2026. The narrative is no longer controlled by labels and publishers. It's controlled by us, the fans, the internet, the people watching. And we're watching closely. Make sure you like the video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single update, because we're covering every twist that comes out. Part 2 drops in 48 hours, and the files I'm decrypting are rumored to include a 2020 FaceTime call where Dre allegedly apologizes for the ritual. You are not ready. And honestly, YouTube might ban it for bullying the music industry. But we'll see. I appreciate you for rocking with me. Stay safe out there, and remember, in this industry, loyalty is a luxury most can't afford. The only thing that lasts is the truth, and the truth's coming, whether they're ready or not. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.